Azaria Chantel Chamberlain, the 11th of June, the 17th of August 1980, was an Australian 2-month, 6-day-old baby girl who was killed by a dingo on the night of the 17th of August 1980, on a family camping trip to Uluru in the Northern Territory. Her body was never found. Her parents, Lindy and Michael Chamberlain, reported that she had been taken from their tent by a dingo. Lindy Chamberlain was, however, tried for murder and spent more than 3 years in prison. She was released when a piece of Azaria's clothing was found near a dingo lair, and new inquests were opened. In 2012, 32 years after Azaria's death, the Chamberlain's version of events was officially supported by a coroner. An initial inquest held in Alice Springs supported the parents' claim and was highly critical of the police investigation. The findings of the inquest were broadcast live on television, a first in Australia. Subsequently, after a further investigation and a second inquest held in Darwin, Lindy Chamberlain was tried for murder, convicted on the 29th of October 1982 and sentenced to life imprisonment. Azaria's father, Michael Chamberlain, was convicted as an accessory after the fact and given a suspended sentence. The media focus for the trial was unusually intense and aroused accusations of sensationalism, while the trial itself was criticized for being unprofessional and biased. The Chamberlains made several unsuccessful appeals, including the final High Court appeal. This was one of the biggest and most misunderstood cases in Australian history. After all legal options had been exhausted, the chance discovery in 1986 of a piece of Azaria's clothing in an area with numerous dingo lairs led to Lindy Chamberlain's release from prison. On the 15th of September 1988, the Northern Territory Court of Criminal Appeals unanimously overturned all convictions against Lindy and Michael Chamberlain. A third inquest was conducted in 1995, which resulted in an open finding. At a fourth inquest held on the 12th of June 2012, Coroner Elizabeth Morris delivered her findings that Azaria Chamberlain had been taken and killed by a dingo. After being released, Lindy Chamberlain was paid $1.3 million for false imprisonment and an amended death certificate was issued. Numerous books have been written about the case, and there exist several pop culture references, notably using some form of the phrase, "A dingo ate my baby." The story has been made into a TV movie, a feature film, Evil Angels, released outside Australia and New Zealand as A Cry in the Dark, a TV miniseries, a play by Brooke Pierce, a concept album by Australian band The Paradise Motel, and an opera, Lindy, by Moya Henderson. Coroner's inquest. The initial coronial inquest into the disappearance was opened in Alice Springs on the 15th of December 1980 before Magistrate Dennis Barrett. On the 20th of February 1981, in the first live telecast of Australian court proceedings, Barrett ruled that the likely cause was a dingo attack. In addition to this finding, Barrett also concluded that, subsequent to the attack, the body of Azaria was taken from the possession of the dingo, and disposed of by an unknown method, by a person or persons, name unknown. The Northern Territory Police and prosecutors were dissatisfied with this finding. Investigations continued, leading to a second inquest in Darwin in September 1981. Based on ultraviolet photographs of Azaria's jumpsuit, James Cameron of the London Hospital Medical College alleged that there was an incised wound around the neck of the jumpsuit, in other words, a cut throat, and that there was an imprint of the hand of a small adult on the jumpsuit, visible in the photographs. Following this and other findings, the Chamberlains were charged with Azaria's murder. In 1995, a third inquest was conducted which failed to determine a cause of death, resulting in an open finding. Case against Lindy Chamberlain. The Crown alleged that Lindy Chamberlain had cut Azaria's throat in the front seat of the family car, hiding the baby's body in a large camera case. She then, according to the proposed reconstruction of the crime, rejoined the group of campers around a campfire and fed one of her sons a can of baked beans, before going to the tent and raising the cry that a dingo had taken the baby. It was alleged that at a later time, while other people from the campsite were searching, she disposed of the body. The key evidence supporting this allegation was the jumpsuit, discovered about a week after the baby's disappearance about 4,000 meters from the tent, bloodstained about the neck, as well as a highly contentious forensic report claiming to have found evidence of fetal hemoglobin in stains on the front seat of the Chamberlain's 1977 Torana hatchback. Fetal hemoglobin is present in infants 6 months and younger. Azaria was 9 weeks old at the time of her disappearance. Lindy Chamberlain was questioned about the garments that Azaria was wearing. She claimed that Azaria was wearing a matinee jacket over the jumpsuit, but the jacket was not present when the garments were found. She was questioned about the fact that Azaria's singlet, which was inside the jumpsuit, was inside out. She insisted that she never put a singlet on her baby's inside out and that she was most particular about this. The statement conflicted with the state of the garments when they were collected as evidence. The garments had been arranged by the investigating officer for a photograph. In her defense, eyewitness evidence was presented of dingoes having been seen in the area on the evening of the 17th of August 1980. All witnesses claimed to believe the Chamberlain's story. One witness, a nurse, also reported having heard a baby's cry after the time when the prosecution alleged Azaria had been murdered. Evidence was also presented that adult blood also passed the test used for fetal hemoglobin, and that other organic compounds can produce similar results on that particular test, including mucus from the nose and chocolate milkshakes, both of which had been present in the vehicle where Azaria was allegedly murdered. Engineer Les Harris, who had conducted dingo research for over a decade, said that, contrary to Cameron's findings, a dingo's carnassial teeth can shear through material as tough as motor vehicle seat belts. He also cited an example of a captive female dingo removing a bundle of meat from its wrapping paper and leaving the paper intact. Evidence was also presented to the effect that a dingo was strong enough to carry a kangaroo, and a report of the removal of a 3-year-old girl by a dingo from the back seat of a tourist motor vehicle at the camping area just weeks before, an event witnessed by the parents. The defense's case was rejected by the jury. Lindy Chamberlain was convicted of murder on the 29th of October 1982 and sentenced to life imprisonment. Michael Chamberlain was found guilty as an accessory after the fact and was given an 18-month suspended sentence. Appeals. An unsuccessful appeal was made to the federal court in April 1983. Subsequently, the High Court of Australia were asked to quash the convictions on the ground that the verdicts were unsafe and unsatisfactory. However, in February 1984 the court refused the appeal by majority. Release and acquittal. The final resolution of the case was triggered by a chance discovery. In early 1986, English tourist David Brett fell to his death from Uluru during an evening climb. Because of the vast size of the rock and the scrubby nature of the surrounding terrain, it was 8 days before Brett's remains were discovered, lying below the bluff where he had lost his footing and in an area full of dingo lairs. As police searched the area, looking for missing bones that might have been carried off by dingoes, they discovered Azaria's missing matinee jacket. The Chief Minister of the Northern Territory ordered Lindy Chamberlain's immediate release and the case was reopened. On the 15th of September 1988, the Northern Territory Court of Criminal Appeals unanimously overturned all convictions against Lindy and Michael Chamberlain. The questionable nature of the forensic evidence in the Chamberlain trial, and the weight given to it, raised concerns about such procedures and about expert testimony in criminal cases. The prosecution had successfully argued that the pivotal hemoglobin test indicated the presence of fetal hemoglobin in the Chamberlain's car and it was a significant factor in the original conviction. But it was later shown that these tests were highly unreliable and that similar tests, conducted on a sound deadener sprayed on during the manufacture of the car, had yielded virtually identical results. 2 years after they were exonerated, the Chamberlains were awarded $1.3 million in compensation for wrongful imprisonment, a sum that covered less than one-third of their legal expenses. The findings of the third coroner's inquest were released on the 13th of December 1995. The coroner found the cause and manner of death as unknown. In December 2011, the Northern Territory coroner, Elizabeth Morris, announced that a fourth inquest would be held in February 2012. On the 12th of June 2012, at a fourth coronial inquest into the disappearance of Azaria Chamberlain, Morris ruled that a dingo was responsible for her death in 1980. Morris made the finding in the light of subsequent reports of dingo attacks on humans causing injury and death. She stated, Azaria Chamberlain died at Ayers Rock on the 17th of August 1980. The cause of her death was as a result of being attacked and taken by a dingo. Morris offered her condolences to the parents and brothers of Azaria Chamberlain on the death of their special and dearly loved daughter and sister, and stated that a death certificate with the cause of death had been registered. Media involvement and bias. The Chamberlain trial was highly publicized. Given that most of the evidence presented in the case against Lindy Chamberlain was later rejected, the case is now used as an example of how media and bias can adversely affect a trial. Public and media opinion during the trial was polarized, with fanciful rumors and sickening jokes and many cartoons. In particular, antagonism was directed towards Lindy Chamberlain for reportedly not behaving like a stereotypical grieving mother. Much was made of the Chamberlain's Seventh-day Adventist religion, including false allegations that the church was actually a cult that killed infants as part of bizarre religious ceremonies, and that the family took a newborn baby to a remote desert location. One anonymous tip was received from a man, falsely claiming to be Azaria's doctor in Mount Issa, that the name Azaria meant sacrifice in the wilderness. It actually means God helped. Others claimed that Lindy Chamberlain was a witch. It was reported that Lindy Chamberlain dressed her baby in a black dress. This provoked negative opinion, despite the trends of the early 1980s, during which black and navy cotton girls' dresses were in fashion, often trimmed with brightly colored ribbon, or printed with brightly colored sprigs of flowers. Subsequent events since the Chamberlain case, proven cases of attacks on humans by dingoes have been discussed in the public domain, in particular dingo attacks on Fraser Island, off the Queensland coast, the last refuge in Australia for isolated purebred wild dingoes. In the wake of these attacks, it emerged that there had been at least 400 documented dingo attacks on Fraser Island. Most were against children, but at least 2 were on adults. For example, in April 1998, a 13-month-old girl was attacked by a dingo and dragged for about 1 meter, 3 feet, from a picnic blanket at the Waddy Point camping area. The child was dropped when her father intervened. In July 2004, Frank Cole, a Melbourne pensioner, claimed that he had shot a dingo in 1980 and found a baby in its mouth. After interviewing Cole on the matter, police decided not to reopen the case. He claimed to have the ribbons from the jacket which Azaria had been wearing when she disappeared as proof of his involvement. However, Lindy Chamberlain claimed that the jacket had no ribbons on it. Cole's credibility was further damaged when it was revealed he had made unsubstantiated claims about another case. In August 2005, a 25-year-old woman named Erin Horsburgh claimed that she was Azaria Chamberlain, but her claims were rejected by the authorities and the Australian Broadcasting Corporation's Media Watch program, which stated that none of the reports linking Horsburgh to the Chamberlain case had any substance. Current status: Michael Chamberlain died of leukemia on the 9th of January 2017, aged 72. The National Museum of Australia has in its collection more than 250 items related to the disappearance of Azaria Chamberlain, which Lindy Chamberlain has helped document. Items include courtroom sketches by artists Joe Derbyshire and Veronica O'Leary, camping equipment, a piece of the dashboard from the Chamberlain family's car, outfits worn by Lindy Chamberlain, the number from her prison door, and the black dress worn by Azaria. The National Library of Australia has a small collection of items relating to Azaria, such as her birth records and her hospital identification bracelet, as well as a manuscript collection which includes around 20,000 documents including some of the Chamberlain family's correspondence and a large number of letters from the general public. Media and cultural impact. Movies and TV. The story has been the subject of several books, films and television shows, and other publications and accounts. John Bryson's book Evil Angels was published in 1985, and in 1988, Australian film director Fred Schepisi adapted the book into a feature film of the same name, released as A Cry in the Dark outside of Australia and New Zealand. It starred Meryl Streep as Lindy Chamberlain and Sam Neill as Michael Chamberlain. The film gave Streep her 8th Academy Award nomination and her first AFI award. In 2002, Lindy, an opera by Moya Henderson, was produced by Opera Australia at the Sydney Opera House. The story was dramatised as a TV miniseries, Through My Eyes, 2004, with Miranda Otto and Craig McLachlan as the Chamberlains. This miniseries was based on Lindy Chamberlain's book of the same name. The case is mentioned in the 2003 comedy film Kangaroo Jack. Podcast. The death of Azaria Chamberlain and the story of the search, inquests, trial and eventual exoneration of the Chamberlains was documented in a commercial podcast, A Perfect Storm, the true story of the Chamberlains. Popular culture references. The incident was transmuted from tragedy to morbid comedy material for U.S. TV programs such as Seinfeld, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The Simpsons, and became deeply embedded in American pop culture with phrases such as, "A dingo's got my baby," serving as a punchline you probably remember hearing before you knew exactly what a dingo was. The incident was referenced in The Simpsons episode, Bart vs. Australia, where Bart receives a phone call from Oz that says, "Hey, I think I hear a dingo eating your baby." It also was referenced in the Rugrats film The Rugrats Movie when, after the children go missing, a news reporter briefly asks Diddy if it was true that a dingo ate her baby. A reference is also made about the case in The Office US, when Kevin Malone is making an Australian accent in Season 3 Episode 21, Product Recall. In the series Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the character Oz is a member of the band Dingoes Ate My Baby. In the 2008 musical Saved, the line, "Did that dingo eat her baby? That's Australia," appears in the song, Make It True. The tabletop role-playing game Kobolds Ate My Baby takes its title from the quote. See also: List of miscarriage of justice cases, List of solved missing persons cases. References. Notes. Bibliography. External links. Chamberlain collection at the National Museum of Australia. Library resources in your library and in other libraries about death of Azaria Chamberlain.